Cool. Let's open that up to a little bit of discussion there about how you feel about the effects of just religion in general on life and society and whatnot. What do you say, guys?
So this is the part I've been waiting for.
Well, there you go. Let's take 2 minutes. Here we go. Starting now.
One thing that I really, really love and feel positive about is that for the first time ever, clinical professionals are starting to recognize something known as RTS, or religious trauma syndrome. A lot of the symptoms of RTS mimic those of normal mental disorders, such as anxiety, problems with self-identity, post-traumatic stress disorder, oftentimes coupled with losing your faith or trying to leave an over-authoritarian or fanatical group or church. There are a lot of dangers in that because religion is sort of antibacterialized and it's cleansed, and it's, thought to be completely harmless, which unfortunately makes it even more insidious, because when people don't realize the dangers, they lump it in the same category as like not believing in Santa Claus anymore. You just grow out of a phase or something, but it can be quite so much more traumatic than that, and can cause a lot of damage. And the the doctrine of original sin I find to be the most damaging, being that we are all inherently bad and must pray for forgiveness constantly, and it's a never-ending cycle of shame and relief to which you are given no feedback to whether you're going to make it to heaven or not. And through control, through totalitarian fear, it seems that it seems a really, really hard burden to take on, to be able to believe in something like a God who created the whole universe but didn't have the insight to hide an apple he didn't want you to have on some other planet, let alone in the same garden.
Perfect timing. Anybody else want to chime in?
Kidding. I'd say I think my biggest struggle with religion is it's like anything else that people flock to, it eventually becomes a power structure. And I don't like power structures. I think that religion, faith, is a good thing. I think that anytime money and politics and power get involved, that's when corruption kind of enters the scene. There's, just speaking from the point of Christianity, there's nothing in the Bible that talks about taking over governments and enforcing beliefs on other people. There's nothing there, but there's a long history in the church of taking over governments. And the same can be said of Buddhism, which isn't even really a religion. It's kind of a loose belief system that you can encapsulate a lot of other places or a lot of other beliefs into. But if you have a Buddhist regime, that's going to be a corrupt regime because all regimes are fundamentally corrupt.
Power corrupts.
Power corrupts. All power corrupts. And I think that's important to remember in any conversation about religion. You're not necessarily talking about the belief system. You're talking about the inherent fallout of having any system overshadow every other system.
There's a really good quote from Seneca, who was alive around Jesus' time, and it's, "Religion is regarded as true by the common people, as false by the wise, and as useful by the rulers." I think that kind of goes along with what Andrew was saying, in that really religion is kind of used to, control the masses, to control people's lifestyles and keep them able to be controlled using a belief system. And I think it's interesting that he said that at such a time in history with major changes to religion.
April?
I think religion gets a really bad rap. I think that the extremists obviously get the most attention in the media. I think that when I think about the area I'm from, even from the Midwest, so many of our hospitals, so many of our educational institutions have its roots in the church. So much art and culture has its roots in the church. And so you could say that's like elitist, and some of the basilicas and cathedrals, took the money of the poor and then squandered it on such elaborate designs. But you still can't deny that art and culture and education and medicine have thrived, and also public service. There are so many, even here where we're at now in the Springs, there's Springs Rescue Mission, Salvation Army, and that's, it's nationwide. There are things like that that are founded on religious principles that, instead of letting people suffer and decline, are actually making a difference in people's lives. And I feel like you cannot ignore those contributions, those positive contributions to our society and to our world, and that's through religion.
Very good.
If I could say one more thing, I just
Sure.
want to point out we're being so fucking funny right now.
Yeah,
We're being so funny, and I think we're going to win an award.
This is some of our best stand-up ever, for sure, yes. So kind of dovetailing into what we were just talking about, some people claim that religion can be viewed as a form of child abuse. Would anybody like to agree, disagree, expand further?
I
or-
would.
Okay.
I've heard this so much, and I've heard that people get brainwashed into religion and all this type of arguments, and I think there are a lot of things that aren't naturally occurring in our world, like eating cereal and milk out of a bowl, like using a toilet to use the restroom. I mean, we don't sit there and say, oh, you've been brainwashed. We recognize that certain things are not terrible ideas, and I'm certainly grateful for indoor plumbing and cereal and milk and lots of random things. So anyway, I guess that's my thoughts on it.
I think it, really depends on the religion, because as you say, like, there are maybe a handful of like positive scriptures that you can pick out, but if you go through like the Old Testament and even some of the New Testament, there are so many things that, if we can't ignore the positives, we also probably shouldn't ignore the fact that there are way more negatives. Like, all of the things that are synonymous, like that people don't do without religion, like all the bad things people do without religion, like, well, genocide certainly happens without religion sometimes, but due to religion a lot, I think. Genital mutilation, things like that. And, and that's just Christianity. We're supposed to be talking about all religions, right?
Well, it doesn't matter.
Well, Christianity's getting it right now, so. Yeah, I don't know.
Everybody gets their time under the knife.
It's tricky. It's a slippery slope. I feel like you would have to learn, a lot of these religions at a young age, because there is no way that an educated person who is an adult and has learned like skills of reasoning could accept, some of the things that are in the Bible, that easily.
True, guys.
I mean, as far as child abuse, I really think it comes down to power systems and systems that have been put in place for years. There are systemic problems that need to be fixed. Those that again doesn't necessarily have to do with the faith itself or the texts the faiths are based off of. There's child abuse in every country in the world. There is, and there are there are child abusers in every religion, and there are child abusers who are atheists. They're just shitty parents. Not to say that they can't be linked, not to say that my dad beat me because he believes spare the rod, spoil the child, and it's scripture, so he beat the shit out of me, and now I'm going to beat the shit out of you because I'm doing all right now, never mind my alcoholism. There's... but I do think there's a defining line between what people take from the texts and what is actually there.
That's true. Otto?
I actually learned from psychology that at the age 12 or something is when you can finally start understanding things that are abstract, like, the existence of a God. So I feel like anything before that is really kind of unnecessary, and it's, just kind of training a behavior or a way of life that, kids don't even understand it because they can't even comprehend the idea. So I would say it's not necessarily abuse, but it is, I don't know.
Indoctrination?
Yeah, behavior training, sure.
Sure, I could see that way too, because I was raised as a Roman Catholic, and they basically started you as a kid, like as Andrew was saying, you're going to hell. Basically, everything was a sin, and you were going to hell for everything. So,
Yeah, that's one thing that I heavily disagree with, is that if it's abusive to like control people through fear and totalitarian threat, like for instance, if you had an abusive boyfriend who said, if you ever leave me, there will be hell to pay, and I'll beat the crap out of you. That's like not okay. That's not love. But yet God does that to us, and we accept it as love because we're taught at such a young age that that's just normal and natural.
and it is weird. And then I think that like when you get into more of a cult kind of a situation, then it's just abuse just across the board for everyone, psychological, emotional, and sexual abuse. I do know that there are, and this is actually going to dovetail into the next thing, there are a lot of certain types of churches, a lot of evangelical churches that are very borderline cult-like, actually, where it's like, you're brought in, and then it's like, well, you can't leave the church now, and they learn everything about your life and everything, and they kind of get in there, and yeah, you're basically sucked in, and it's hard to get out.
Yes. Man, that was so hard.
Man,
I could-
it's hard
I
to
could-
make that funny.
I
though,
could,
isn't it?
I can feel the fires of hell
It's a little
warming me up
easier
right now for that
to do
last
on
little bit.
acid,
There.
but
Jesus Christ, holy shit!
it's hard to focus on acid. Because like I had a lot of things I felt were like really important points that I wanted to say. And my acid was like,
We were funny, but we might have been interesting.
go ahead, you could describe it.
I would, but I kind of want to go do comedy now.
Where?